France's equity benchmark, it's trailed European and U.S. peers since President Macron called that snap election. It was a little over a year ago, let's say a year and a half ago, June of 2024. Worries about political turmoil taking hold again this August. Investors have had their concerns. Is this what they've been fearing?
The short answer is not yet, and believe it or not, even though what's into feels like the 6th season finale of France this year, we're still not at a point where this is a fiscal crisis. It's still the same kind of political stalemate, and actually the latest development that Emmanuel Macron is giving the same man, Sebastien Lecornu, another 48 hours to try and come up with a sufficient coalition to be able to pass a budget, because that's what this is all about, tells us that we're not at the end of this season just yet. So essentially we're into another round of negotiations led by the same man speaking to the same people, hoping for a different result. What happened this morning is that those talks had fallen apart and Sebastien Lecornu became the shortest-lived Prime Minister in modern French history, just 27 days on the job. And actually the ministers that were appointed last night became the shortest-serving ministers as well. Most of them were only in the job for just over 12 hours before they had resigned, effectively, because the government had fallen. So we're back into a sort of holding pattern for 48 hours. We know already that there are meetings planned for the Élysée Palace tomorrow morning with those parties who have been loosely dealing with Emmanuel Macron's party in France as well. The hope is that they will be able to do better this time round. There's been some caste changes in the cabinet that might help that process along. But where we'll end up by Wednesday evening is now the key question. Emmanuel Macron, and bear in mind we are deep in the annals of political spin here as well, has talked about taking responsibility if the parties can't agree by Wednesday evening. Now what that means could be really anything that you can imagine. The options he has open to him is finding someone new for the job, so getting rid of Sebastien Lecornu for a second time, calling an election to the National Assembly, although polls indicate he probably wouldn't end up with the result that was that different, or even in extremis resigning himself, although that very much looks off the table for the moment.
Well, it makes you wonder if President Macron's request of his outgoing prime minister is kind of a little insanity, right? Asking him to kind of do the same thing over again and expecting different results. What's really, going on in France? Why is, what are the difficulties politically that this nation is trying to figure as it moves to its next chapter, if you will?
So look, since June of last year when Emmanuel Macron called snap elections to the National Parliament, we've ended up with a parliament essentially that has three main blocks. None of them can govern by themselves and they can't agree between each other to govern either. So what's been happening since then is that Emmanuel Macron's centrist group, along with the centre-right party, have been sort of getting some measures passed by getting other parties to abstain, particularly the centre-left Socialist Party. What the hope of this Prime Minister had been would be to bring on board the likes of that Socialist Party, perhaps convince them to abstain on key votes to allow them to get some sort of budget through. But actually the Socialists have been pretty intransigent in the past month, and that's really what's changed in the past month, is that they have insisted they want their budget plans, which involve austerity at a different pace to what's being proposed by the current government, but also things like a wealth tax proposed by the economist Gabriel Zucman. Essentially nobody in the centre or the centre-right wants those things. Nobody can agree. The question is, within 48 hours, can they come up with what the Élysée Palace is calling a platform of stability to try and keep the, essentially, country ticking over and some sort of budget agreed before they start hitting a whole bunch of constitutional and legal deadlines for getting that plan outlined.
Right, sometimes a second chance, and as we all in journalism know, deadlines can make things happen. We all live it every day. Hey, Stephen, last question, and I think it was something we were kicking around here. You've got a president, Emmanuel Macron. You have now an outgoing prime minister. I mean, who really has the power in France, and what do we need to understand here on the other side of the pond in terms of these two positions, and how significant is it when a prime minister leaves?
Look, the Prime Minister has historically in France been this pressure release valve that presidents have gotten rid of them when they've wanted to reset their agendas. So we're not used to them being long-standing public figures that would last a whole 5 years in the way of a presidential term. But what's been happening in the past 2 years is sort of the extreme opposite of that, where prime ministers can't seem to get anything done because of the fractured nature of the parliament. So the power still very much lies with Emmanuel Macron. He is the man that can make one of the three decisions that he has in front of him.
Yeah.
You can sort of imagine that he dissolved the parliament the last time. That didn't work so well, so he doesn't want to go down that route again. He's hoping he can find somebody who can do a deal in the meantime so that he doesn't have to think about the more extreme options like him resigning early. His term still runs till 2027, so he still has that hold on power, at least for now. But when you look at what's happening to French borrowing costs, you wonder as well how much influence the bond markets are going to be having on these decisions as well. As time gets tighter for a budget to be passed, we know investors are already pretty jittery. They got a shock today.
Right.
How long more will they be patient with France?